We'll just be getting ahead with our content for week 2 now. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to just do a little review of the things we did last week, just really briefly, all the tags and everything. Then we're going to get into more of the attributes part of HTML, which we did last week with width and source for the images, but this week we're going to get a bit more in depth. And then we're going to talk about how to use blocks or the div elements for HTML. And then tomorrow, we're actually going to get into section 4. Today, we're just covering 1 through 3. Section 4 is going to be more of an application of all the stuff we learned today, which is kind of heavier material. So we wanted to make sure we took 2 days to do everything. So first off, just for a review, let's see what we did. You know that HTML structure is just, we have an opening tag, like a paragraph, and then a closing tag. And then we just put the text that we want to display within those tags. Then we went through images. We did width and source and height and things like that. And those are the attributes. So we'll be going more to attributes today. And these are the values that we set everything to. So source is going to be something like a string or a word or a link and something like that. And width and height are obviously numbers. And then again, I'll be updating the list as we go along. With these are the basic tags that we will be using throughout the unit. We went through some of these last time, but not all of them. Okay, Audie, do you want to go through attributes?
Yep, sure. Let me share my screen real quick. So the fundamental thing linking HTML and CSS together are some things called attributes. So primarily, there are few attributes like width, height, which we've already covered before. So these are going to control the width and the height of things such as images, or I believe you can use them for other tags as well. SRC, which defines the source of our image. Class and ID, which we don't know yet, but we will cover today. Href, which we will also cover today, alt and type. So these are several HTML attributes that all have a specific purpose, and keep in mind that not all attributes work on all tags. So some of them are pretty specific. So we've already covered SRC before. This is going to be the source of our image. So whatever I put in there will get displayed. And I think you all have done this before, but this is just a basic demo of how to get the image link. So just go onto Google, search an image, right click on it. Hold on. And it's going to give you a list of options. And out of all of these, make sure to select copy image link over here. And width and height, again, I'm pretty sure this is recap, but you can just adjust the width and the height of the image to adjust the size. So there are two things in HTML that are pretty fundamental when it comes to styling things, which is class and ID. So not only are they useful for CSS, you can also use them for JavaScript. So the idea of a class is that it's used for one or more HTML things. Meanwhile, an ID is unique and only used for one. So a couple of examples is a class could be, say, cows. So I have a bunch of HTML elements that all have the class cows. So these are just shared, I guess, names that are just going to be associated with each element. And meanwhile, IDs are much more specific in the sense that they should only be one element with one ID. So in this case, I've set the IDs to the name of cows. So you can actually assign several IDs and classes just to one tag. So example, I wanted to, for some reason, I have an image containing both like a group photo of cows. So in this case, I've split them up with a space. And keep in mind that you can use dashes to separate HTML element names. You can use dashes. You can separate class names through spaces to add multiple IDs and classes to one tag. We'll elaborate more on this later as you go closer into using HTML and CSS to basically style and make our websites more interactive. But as for now, just keep in mind that IDs are only for one thing, meanwhile classes are used for several. So href is used for A tags. So A tags stand for anchors, and you can creates a link. You can click on it and it redirects you to a different website. So again, you can always nest things. So over here, you can see an example. That is an A tag. That is an A tag right there embedded inside of an H1. Same thing over here. You can just click on it, and when you click on it, it takes you to Google.
Right. So we're not going to get to the really complicated parts of HTML organization today, but we do want to introduce the idea of divs, which is a special kind of tag where you can basically align a bunch of content throughout the website and put content into it for you to style all in one. So these images kind of just show like what it would look like in code and what it would look like on the website. So if we had a div up there, we could make like specify for it to be a header. We could have a main div here for our content. We could have a footer div here. So the purpose of divs is really to provide like structure to your website. So instead of having just maybe some bullet points here, an image there, a header here, and a header there, it's way easier to style it all in one than to, oh, sorry. 1 second, I actually fixed something. Okay. It's much easier to just have these divs throughout our website and then give them the attributes that Adi was going over, like classes and IDs, so that we can style a bunch of elements in them at the same time. Or we just give them, or we just divide our website up into different divs, so it's much easier to deal with in sections than to just deal with it as one whole. So to make a div, it's just like any other tag, basically. We just have our opening tag and our closing tag, and anything we put inside the div is just going to be part of that block of the website. So if we use this code right here, and you guys can open up your code pens actually for this if you want. I'm not sure we announced that at the start, but if you open up CodePen and enter this code in, you'll see that we've made a basic div and a block containing all this stuff. So yeah, we've just created a div and we just have our image in it, and it looks pretty normal, right? But so now we're going to actually do something with it. So you'll notice last time we ignored it, but this time we're just going to get a tiny bit more into it. You all have the CSS section in your code pen, so I'd like you to put in these two kind of blocks of code in there. And the result is right here, but at the same time, I'd like you to see for yourselves what happens when I put this in. What we're doing when we're using the hashtag here and we're putting the ID that we've given to our div is we're basically specifying to CSS which element we want to modify. Like what element do we want to style? So we don't have to memorize all these styles today. We just want to show a basic demo of how divs work, and that's why we're doing this. But notice how when we put these styles like color, font size, and font family inside this section of CSS with inside of my thumbnail, the text inside of our div, which we labeled my thumbnail, is going to change according to what we put in there. So you see how our text color has become blue, our fonts has gone much larger, and our font family, or just the type of font, has gotten different too. It changed something from like Times New Roman to Calibri, basically. And then if we go here, we also notice maybe that adding this section of code where we say my thumbnail image and we set the width, we notice the image got a little smaller. And that's because our original image we had set to 300, it's width to 300. But when we use this in CSS, what happens is this style here basically actually overrides what we put in that tag. So why is it doing that? Because when we add this tag, this image label in front of the ID that we give our div, that specifies that we want anything inside of that CSS that we put in there, any style we want in that CSS there, sorry, we put that inside, we apply that to the image inside of the div that we put there. So any CSS in here, like width 200 pixels, that's going to be applied to the element that we specify before those two little curly braces there. And when we're saying image after, when we just put this image highlighted in green after hashtag my thumbnail, we're saying we want this style only applied to images that are inside of that div.
We're gonna get a little into our CSS styling. Basically, we can use CSS to make our websites look better, but Burkhan elaborated a little over it. How do we actually apply it? So Burkhan mentioned how you can use IDs to basically link it into CSS, but we'll go a little more in depth. So when using IDs in HTML, like this over here, CSS can recognize that it's an ID using the hashtag. So over here, CSS is able to recognize that to watch out for any IDs by using this hashtag and then the ID name following it. So in this case, red text and red text. Make sure that these are word for word the same. Any this includes case sensitivity. So yeah, similarly, you can use the period for class names. And there are a whole bunch of CSS styles like color, background color. There's a huge list, but here are just a few basic ones. You have color for adjusting the color of the text, background color for setting the background color, background image. You can set an image as the background, border, it has a border, 2 elements, border radius, it basically curves them. Font family, you can change how the text looks, font weight, you can bold it, float, it allows it to basically stick to the right side or the left side of the screen. Height, width, margin, and padding, which is probably the most important one, which we'll briefly explain today. So the concept behind padding is you have a box. Maybe it'll be better if we used an example over here. So I'll just demonstrate a couple of the tags that we just used. So say, for example, I want to create a div and I'm going to set the ID to a color box. And I'll just add text in here saying hello. So we have a simple text hello. But in our styles, I'm going to go ahead and set our color box. Again, notice that I'm using the hashtag to tell CSS that I want to edit the ID. And then we can first set background color to say green, for example. That's updated the background color directly. So the thing about margin is if we set margin to say 10 pixels, so PX stands for pixels, by the way, it's adding space around that. So if you see, the more I add, the more space is basically being created around it. So it's basically being offset. So if I update this instead of margin, say if I used padding instead, it's being inserted inside of the div. So margin goes outside and adds space around it. Meanwhile, padding adds space inside. So the analogy that my slides used was that padding is basically what you add inside of your box, and margin is what separates those boxes.